Hey, what's going on, guys? Pete here with MixBetterNow.com and LearningToMix.com. I hope you're all doing well. Today, we're going to be taking a look at how to Brauerize your lead vocals.
What's up? This is Stephen Slate, and you are watching Mix Better Now.
All right, so before we get into this here, I need to explain what Brauerizing is, as I'm sure some of you might not have heard that term or might not know who Michael Brauer is. So essentially, in a nutshell, Michael Brauer is an amazing, probably one of the best of all time. He's certainly one of my heroes. He's a Grammy Winning mix engineer, in addition to being a producer, audio engineer, recording engineer. I mean, the guy can do everything. He has won Grammys for, I believe, mixing Parachutes from Coldplay, Continuum by John Mayer, and maybe La Vida Loca by Coldplay. I'm not a big Coldplay guy. I don't know all the records, although I do like the Parachutes record. If you look up his discography, it's insane as to what he's mixed. I'm pretty sure that he's mixed one of your favorite records, and you might not even know it. I know that was the case for myself. Now, what is Brauerizing, and why should we care? Well, what Michael Brauer does, he works in the famous Electric Lady Studios in New York City, which of course was Jimi Hendrix's studio. He works on a big SSL console, a hybrid rig. I mean, he runs a Pro Tools rig, as most folks do, but he has a ton of outboard gear behind him. Check him out, Google him. We're going to take a hop over to his website in 1 second because I want to read something from there, but he has an amazing collection of hardware, particularly compressors. Now, that's where Brauerizing our vocals comes into play. His overall concept for the way that he works in a mix is quite amazing because he will send all of his music to 4 sub mix buses or sub masters, and then it'll go out to a mix bus. So he has sub A, sub B, C, and D. Now, the concept is he will send specific groups of tracks to each one of these compressors to impart a certain tonal flavor and a certain tonal characteristic out of the compressors. So, of course, all compressors are going to do their thing. They're all going to compress. Whether we're using a VCA, a FET, a Vari-Mu, or an optical style compressor, they're all going to compress the audio in some way. What Michael Brauer likes to do is he likes to utilize just how tonefully amazing different compressors can be when audio is passed through them. So since he does this to the overall mix, like he might say, okay, we're going to send the drums and the bass to A, we're going to send vocals and keys to B, guitars are going to go to C, percussion and effects are going to go to D. Okay, I'm making that up. I mean, it might be, it varies from him on mix to mix. But real quick, this is from his website. I highly implore you to go check it out, mbrauer.com. Multi-bus compression in a nutshell. He says, I use 5 buses, 4 processed, 1 unprocessed. So the 4 I'm talking about are those subs, A, B, C, and D. The 1 unprocessed is where all of those get summed to. Okay, now the function of multiple buses is to avoid having one instrument or group of instruments adversely affect the level or sound of another single group of instruments. Right there, that's super important. The function of multiple auxes is to generate tone, fatness, attitude, and urgency to a sound. And then he says a quick demonstration of stereo versus multi-bus compression is scenario 1, all tracks feeding to 1 bus with a compressor across it, which is probably how the large majority of us mix. Bring up the vocal too loud and the stereo compressor will kick in and adversely affect the bottom and instruments like kick and bass. Bring up the bass or kick too much and it'll cause havoc on the vocal level. You guys get the idea. So now what he says, if you separate instruments into different categories, that will allow freedom of movement, okay? Instruments that are in the upper mid-range of a song, such as vocals or keyboards, synths, percussion, bring up the vocal a lot, and it will only affect the instruments assigned to A. Choose instruments for a bus that will complement each other. So he goes on and he talks about all of these in detail. I could stay here for 20 minutes talking about it, but I'm not. I want to show you how I interpret him to Brauerize the lead vocals here. So look, go check that out on your own time. Now, this is a little bit of like a more advanced concept here. This is certainly not something that I would necessarily advocate trying if you're, brand new to mixing. But on the lead vocal, he will set up 5 sends and returns. Okay, so essentially 5 compressors here. And it's almost like having 5 channels of parallel compression. So what I want to do is I went ahead and I've set this up. I'm going to show you how I implement all this. Let me just hit play from the first verse. Pay attention to the lead vocal because that's where all this is going on. This is a much more stripped down song, an acoustic song where Matt is singing in a baritone register. I think it really makes his voice sound cool. Let's check it out.
My head is throbbing, so I know I'm alive. My pulse is racing to the other side, asking where and when and what might never be, pumping blood straight from my heart. The city sleeps while my mind's on fire, blurring lines between wrong and right. I'll have it all figured out by morning light, pumping blood straight from my heart. The heart rate slows.
All right, so you guys get a little idea of what this sounds like. So the best way to explain all of the things that are going on is we need to start with the lead vocal right here. I'm just going to flick the acoustic off. Let's actually make this a little bit bigger. Get this in frame. Okay, so the way that we're going to start this is there's 2 overall approaches that we can use here. We can set up 5 sort of send and returns where we're going to have all the compressors on it, or as I'll show you after this, we can duplicate the lead vocal 4 times, giving us a total of 5 lead vocal tracks. We can then put a compressor on each one and then sum it down to the lead vocal bus. Don't worry if this is sounding confusing. I promise after this is all done, it will absolutely become clear and easy, and it's something I know you guys can all take on board and apply to your own mixes. So let's take a look at the vocal. I'm going to turn these sends off here. I'm going to turn the sends off here on the bus, and let's just listen to the lead. Now, we've got nothing on here except a couple things. So first up, pretty much with any mix that I do that's not recorded through a console, I'm going to throw the Slate VCC on. This is not a requirement. This has nothing to do with Brauerizing. This has to do with me, with wojizing or whatever. So I'm just choosing to go to a little bit of tape here. All right. So the first step you're going to do is kind of treat your vocal like you normally would. All right. So for me, tape is a very common thing. Then I'm just doing a little bit of subtractive EQ right here, cleaning it up per normal. Now, here's where sort of the Brauerizing kicks in. We're going to set up a compressor, but we're not going to do heavy compressing. I don't really want to see this, anywhere up here hovering for a long time. We just want to get the needle moving a little bit. One more thing to point out is after here, I have a Millennia EQ, but this is just to add a little bit of brightness up top, like a 10K shelf. And then I'm adding maybe like a little 3K into the vocal, okay? So if we take a look at the 1176, now this does not have to be an 1176. This could be whatever compressor you want to use. Again, this is about the tone of the compressors, not necessarily about compressing. It is about compressing, but it's just as important how it sounds tonally versus how it sounds in solely compressed. So watch how much compression we're doing. I'll go to a different spot here. Check out what's happening.
I'm not saying I'm superior, and I'm not saying I'm inferior, but I tell you I can feel my arteries pumping blood straight to my heart.
Okay, so really it's peaking around 3 dB. It's on average, I'd say we're doing about 1 dB of compression here, and that's on purpose, okay? I just want to knock back the larger peaks of the initial transients there. Now, here's where we're going to start bringing in all of these compressors. So on these sends and returns, we have 5 different compressors. We've got a Fairchild. We have a distressor set to nuke. We have a Blue Stripe 1176. We have a Neve 33609, and we have a it's actually a Manley Varimu, but Michael Brauer uses an old gate stay level. I mean, it's a Varimu compressor. I don't have a gate stay level, so we're going to be using these. Now, all of these are getting sent and routed to our lead vocal bus, as is the lead vocal. I have the send amount here on all of these set to 0, which is unity. Because I'm choosing to get my volume from the return fader here. So the farther these are up, the more volume is going to be in. The farther they're down, the less volume we're going to have. You can see there's a little bit of a blend across all 5 of these. So let me just show you how they're all set up, and then we can sort of take a listen to them. We'll flick the Fairchild on. Now these are in no particular order, okay? Because it really... I mean, some people would argue that it matters, and other people might argue that it doesn't matter. The important thing here is, how does it sound to you? So Fairchild, okay? It's just the 660. Now, Michael Brauer has a model called the 666. I only have the 660 and the 670 in plug-in form, so I'm using this. Let's take a listen to what it sounds like, and also pay attention to how much compression we're doing here.
I'm not saying I'm superior, and I'm not saying I'm inferior.
So again, we're doing a similar amount as to the 1176 here as an insert. We're not doing much, okay? We're also turning up the input gain quite a bit, because I really want to hit those tubes and the transformers hard to get the tonality out of them. Time constant for me is on 1. Now you can tweak these to however you want, okay? I'm just showing you how he sets all these up and the concept behind them, like the fundamental principles of Brauerizing here. So the next one we're gonna bring in is the arouser or the distressor. Okay, so now look, I know this isn't a distressor, like I don't have the UAD one at the moment, but I really like the arouser from Empirical Labs. For me, it sounds very close to the distressor. So the important thing to take away from this is he puts this on the nuke setting on his on his analog distressor. So the rivet here is the same as the nuke setting, and this is probably the compressor we're going to be doing the most compression with in parallel. Let's check it out.
I'm not saying I'm superior, and I'm not saying I'm inferior, but I tell you, I can feel my arteries.
So again, about 10, 12 dB of compression. You could see here the Fairchild and the distressor are about the same in terms of how much level we're bringing in. Let's keep moving on here. I'll go back to these and I'll sort of get in a little bit more detail in a sec. Next up here, we're going to be using the Blue Stripe 1176, the Rev A. I have this just set up to do a little bit of compression. Now, this particular box, Michael describes as providing a sense of tonal urgency, which I think is a wonderful way to describe sort of how something can sound. Check it out.
I'm not saying I'm superior, and I'm not saying I'm inferior, but I tell you, I can feel my arteries pumping blood straight to my heart. As dawn arrives, the streets grow heavy.
All right, so common denominator so far is that we are not doing a lot of compression in parallel, okay? We're predominantly getting tone from these boxes, as opposed to a whole lot of compression. Next one up, 33609 from Neve. Now, Michael Brauer uses this a lot. He will also use this on his main 4 bus setup going out. Okay, so his 4 sub mix buses or sub master buses. This is definitely one of them because I guess to him this has a very particular sound, and it does. So this has a fixed attack time of 3 milliseconds. I'm using the 6-to-1 ratio, and the release time over here is 100 milliseconds.
I'm not saying I'm superior.
Let's go to verse 1 just to get a little variety.
My head is throbbing, so I know I'm alive. My pulse is racing to the other side, asking where and when and what might never be. Pumping blood straight from my heart. The city sleeps while my mind's on fire, blurring lines between wrong and right. I'll have it all figured out by morning light. Pumping blood straight from my heart. The heart rate slows as we get older.
Okay, so by bringing in the Neve, now we're getting another flavor in the vocal chain. Last up, I have this labeled stay level, but of course, it's just a Varimute compressor. Let's get this out of here. So again, we have the attack around medium, recoveries around fast, and we're just doing a little bit of compression.
My head is throbbing, so I know I'm alive. My pulse is racing to the other side, asking where and when and what might never be. Pumping blood straight from my heart.
All right, so maybe up to about 4 dB on the last 2 compressors, but for me, it's okay. Now look, the next step that's up to you is blending the combination of these 5 compressors together via the return faders, or if you want to set the returns to 0 at unity and then use the sends. I like doing it this way just because then I'm going to get a constant level of compression, but now that we have all 5 of these in, this is sort of going to be the vocal sound. Now I have a limiter over here on the bus just to, in case we get any overages or whatever, but I'm not relying on this for my sound, okay? This isn't really part of the tone at all. I've got a plate and a small room reverb on the vocal. That is, that's not imperative either, but the main thing to take away from this is we're using 5 compressors plus 1 on the insert to blend the tones together to essentially sum to the lead vocal bus, giving us a very big, thick, fat, warm vocal sound. Now I know that those might mean different things to different people, but check it out. We'll bypass everything and then we'll bring it in. All right. So all the sends off, turn the acoustic on, and we'll turn the effects on. And you could really hear, the vocal, yes, it will sound good with just the normal processing on it. But once we bring in all of these, listen to how thick and fat and almost larger than life the vocal gets, okay? So just keep in mind, all the sends are off right now.
My head is throbbing, so I know I'm alive. My pulse is racing to the other side.
Okay, all the sends in.
My head is throbbing, so I know I'm alive. My pulse is racing to the other side. And when and what might never be. Pumping blood straight from my heart. The city sleeps while my mind's on fire, blurring lines between wrong and right. I'll have it all figured out by morning light. Pumping blood straight from my heart. The heart rate slows as we get older.
I mean, just amazing, sounds huge. Now, if we turn these off again, I'll push the volume up. Listen to the nuance of this vocal. It's gonna be a little bit thinner, a little bit wimpier. Here we go.
My head is throbbing, so I know I'm alive. My pulse is racing to the other side, asking where and when and what might never be. Pumping blood straight from my heart.
Okay, compressors in, Brauerized again.
My head is throbbing, so I know I'm alive. My pulse is racing to the other side, asking where and when and what might never be. Pumping blood straight from my heart.
Man, that's such a big difference. I really hope it's coming across. I know, all the weird compression that happens when things are uploaded to YouTube and whatever, but it's pretty massive, okay? So we'll leave these all up just so you guys can get an idea how much compression is actually taking place on all of these. Check it out.
My head is throbbing, so I know I'm alive. My pulse is racing to the other side, asking where and when and what might never be. Pumping blood straight from my heart. The city sleeps while my mind's on fire, blurring lines between wrong and right. I'll have it all figured out by morning light. Pumping blood straight from my heart.
Let's listen to a chorus just for fun, because it goes a little bit higher there and the background vocals come in.
Lord, look up at the sun. You know that I'm not going anywhere. Come on, go ahead and stare straight into my heart. I'm not saying I'm superior.
Just super, super cool. Now let's take a quick pop over. Let me show you how I set this up when I duplicated the tracks, and then we'll get out of here. Okay, so real quick before we end here, I just wanted to show you there's another way that you can approach this. Look, it's all about workflow and whatever, whatever you feel more comfortable with. Now, like I said, you can duplicate the lead vocal. So, right, let's just say here's our lead vocal. I've duplicated it 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, giving us a total of 5 tracks. Now, instead of setting up 5 sends and returns, we're going to put our compressors on here. So as you'll see on the first one, I have the Rev A, okay, the blue stripe setup. I've got the 33609 right here. We've got the Fairchild, so on and so forth. Here's our Manly, and the arouser is on, or the distressor is on the last track. Now, the way that I have set this up is instead of doing the EQ on the lead vocal track, I'm just blending these first with the compression going into the lead vocal bus, where over here we're going to have the tape, we're going to have the EQ, we're going to have our Millennia, and then of course we're going to have the limiter set up. So it's just kind of like 2 different ways to skin a cat, but they're both going to sound great. And it really just depends on, if you feel more comfortable working this way, then great, that's awesome. But check it out. I'll show you how it pretty much sounds the same.
I'm not saying I'm superior, and I'm not saying I'm inferior, But I tell you, I can feel my arteries pumping blood straight to my heart.
Right? So, I mean, it's just about the same thing. They're just two different approaches to, sort of blending all these compressor tones together.
My head is throbbing, so I know I'm alive. My pulse is racing to the other side.
All right, let's go ahead and hop back over to the other one real quick. Here's the just the sends and returns.
My head is throbbing, so I know I'm alive. My pulse is racing to the other side. Asking where and when and what might never be. Pumping blood straight from my heart.
All right, so there you have it. Those are, basically two different ways to do the same thing in how to Brauerize your lead vocals. As always, guys, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions on this, I know it's kind of a deep and a heady concept. It's definitely not super straightforward, and I am by no means, an expert on this, but this is sort of my interpretation as to how Michael Brauer sort of dials in his lead vocal sound. If you guys like this video, please like, subscribe, and share. Make sure you hit that little bell icon next to the subscribe button. That way you'll stay in the loop as to all the new content that goes up. Thanks again for watching, guys. I hope you all have an awesome day, and I will catch you next time.
What's up? This is Stephen Slate, and you are watching Mix Better Now.